Chapter 6 of the Bird Study Book. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. The Bird Study Book by T. Gilbert Pearson. Chapter 6. The Economic Value of Birds. Wild birds are now generally protected by law. Wander where you will through every province of Canada and almost every nook and corner of the United States, you will find that the lawmaker has been there before you, and has thrown over the birds the sheltering arm of prohibitory statutes. Legislators are not usually supposed to spend much energy on drafting and enacting measures, unless it is thought that these will result in practical benefit to at least some portion of their constituents. Legislative bodies are not much given to appropriating hundreds of thousands of dollars annually for the enforcement of a law which is purely sentimental in its nature. It is clear, therefore, that our lawmakers regard the wild bird as a great value to the country from the standpoint of dollars and cents. Destructiveness of insects. If we go back a few years and examine certain widely read publications issued by the United States Department of Agriculture, we can understand more fully why our legislative bodies have regarded so seriously the subject of bird protection. In one of the yearbooks of the department we read that the annual loss to the cotton crop of the United States by insects amounts to $60 million. We learn, too, that grasshoppers and other insects annually destroy $53 million worth of hay, and that $2 million worth of cereals are each year eaten by our insect population. In fact, we are told that 1/10 of all the cereals, hay, cotton, tobacco, forests, and general farm products is the yearly tax which insects levy and collect. In some parts of the country, market gardening and fruit growing are the chief industries of the people. Now, when a vegetable raiser or fruit grower starts to count up the cost of his crops, one of the items which he must take into consideration is the 25% of his products which goes to feed the insects of the surrounding country. Not all insects are detrimental to man's interests, but as we have just seen, the government officially states that many of them are tremendously destructive. Anyone who has attempted to raise apples, for example, has made the unpleasant acquaintance of the codling moth and the curculio. Every season the apple raisers of the United States expend $8.25 million in spraying to discourage the activities of these pests. In considering the troubles of the apple growers, we may go even farther and count the $12 million worth of fruit spoiled by the insects despite all the spraying which has taken place. Chinch bugs destroy wheat to the value of $20 million a year, and the cotton boll weevil costs the southern planters an equal amount. Plagues of insects. Every now and then we read of great plagues of insects which literally lay waste to a whole section of the country. History tells of these calamities which have troubled the civilized world from the days of Pharaoh to the present time. During the summer of 1912 there was a great outbreak of armyworms in South Carolina. In innumerable millions they marched across the country, destroying vegetation like a consuming fire. In the year 1900, Hessian flies appeared in great numbers in Ohio and Indiana, and before they subsided they had destroyed absolutely 2.5 million acres of the finest wheat to be found in the Middle West, and wheat land dropped 40% in value. Closing this yearbook, with its long tables of discouraging statements, we may find more cheerful reading if we turn to another Agricultural Department publication entitled Some Common Birds and Their Relation to Agriculture, Farmer's Bulletin No. 54. We need peruse only a few pages to become impressed with the fact that our Government Biological Survey has made an exhaustive and exceedingly thorough investigation of the feeding habits of the wild birds that frequent the fields and forests. The reports of the economic ornithologists herein given are almost as surprising as the sad records given by the entomologists in the yearbook. We learn that birds, as a class, constitute a great natural check on the undue increase of harmful insects, and furthermore, that the capacity for food of the average bird is decidedly greater in proportion than that of any other vertebrate. Some useful birds. Most people who have made the acquaintance of our common birds know the friendly little chickadee, which winter and summer is a constant resident in groves of deciduous trees. It feeds, among other things, on borers living in the bark of trees, on plant lice which suck the sap, on caterpillars which consume the leaves, and on codling worms which destroy fruit. One naturalist found that 4 chickadees had eaten 105 female cankerworm moths. With scalpel, tweezer, and microscope these moths were examined, and each was found to contain on an average 185 eggs. This gives a total of nearly 20,000 cankerworm moth eggs destroyed by 4 birds in a few minutes. The chickadee is very fond of the eggs of this moth and hunts them assiduously during the 4 weeks of the summer when the moths are laying them. The nighthawk, which feeds mainly in the evening, and which is equally at home in the pine barrens of Florida, the prairies of Dakota, or the upper air of New York City, is a slaughterer of insects of many kinds. A government agent collected one, in the stomach of which were the remains of 34 May beetles, the larvae of which are the white grubs well known to farmers on account of their destruction of potatoes and other vegetables. Several stomachs have been found to contain 50 or more different kinds of insects, and the number of individuals in some cases run into the thousands. Nighthawks also eat grasshoppers, potato beetles, cucumber beetles, boll weevils, leaf hoppers, and numerous gnats and mosquitoes. Surely this splendid representative of the goatsucker family deserves the gratitude of all American citizens. Among the branches of certain of our fruit trees we sometimes see large webs which have been made by the tent caterpillars. An invading host seems to have pitched its tents among the boughs on all sides. If undisturbed, these caterpillars strip the foliage from the trees. Fortunately, there is a bird which is very fond of these hairy intruders. This is the cuckoo, and he eats so many that his stomach actually becomes lined with a thick coating of hairs from their woolly bodies. The Baltimore oriole is also fond of rifling these webs. Another well-known bird that helps to make this part of the world habitable is the flicker. It is popular in every neighborhood where it is found, and is known by a wide variety of local names, over 125 of which have been recorded. Golden-winged woodpecker, some people call it. Other names are high-holder, wake-up, walk-up, yellowhammer, and pigeon woodpecker. The people of Cape Hatteras know it as wilcresin, and in some parts of Florida it is the yucker bird. Naturalists call it Colaptes auratus, but name it as you may, this bird of many aliases is well worthy of the esteem in which it is held. It gathers its food almost entirely from the ground, being different in this respect from other woodpeckers. One may flush it in the grove, the forest, the peanut field, or the untilled prairie, and everywhere it is found engaged in the most highly satisfactory occupation of destroying insect life. More than half of its food consists of ants. In this country, taken as a whole, flickers are very numerous, and the millions of individual birds which have yet escaped the guns of degenerate pot hunters constitute a mighty army of destruction to the Formicidae. Let us not forget that any creature which eats ants is a decided boon to humanity. Ants, besides being wood borers, invaders of pantries, killers of young birds, nuisances to campers and barefoot boys, care for and perpetrate plant lice which infest vegetation in all parts of the country to our very serious loss. Professor Forbes, in his study of the corn plant louse, found that in spring ants mine along the principal roots of the corn. Then they collect the plant lice, or aphids, and convey them into these burrows and there watch and protect them. Without the assistance of ants, it appears that the plant lice would be unable to reach the roots of the corn. In return for these attentions, the ants feast upon the honey-like substances secreted by these aphids. The ants, which have the reputation of being no sluggards, take good care of their diminutive milk cattle, and will tenderly pick them up and transport them to new pastures when the old ones fail. Late in the summer they carefully collect all the aphid eggs that are obtainable, and taking them into their nests keep them safe during the winter. When spring comes and the eggs hatch, the ants gather the young plant lice and place them on plants. It may be seen, therefore, that the flicker, by digging up ants' nests and feeding on the inhabitants, has its value in an agricultural community. The question of weed seeds. The work of the chickadee, the nighthawk, the cuckoo, and the flicker is only an example of the good being done by at least 2/3 of birds in the United States, and most of the remainder are not without their beneficial qualities. When the coming of winter brings a cessation of insect life, many birds turn to the weed patches for food. Especially is this the case with the various varieties of native sparrows. No one has yet determined just how many weed seeds one of these birds will eat in a day. The number, however, must be very great. An ornithologist, upon examining the stomach of a tree sparrow, found it to contain 700 undigested pigeon weed seeds, and in the same way it was discovered that a snow bunting had taken 1,000 seeds of the pigweed at one meal. Mr. E.H. Forbush, the well-known Massachusetts naturalist, frequently amuses himself by observing the birds near his house as they feed on the millet seed that he provides for them. Speaking of some of the things